All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sizes and sorts and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka SomeGadgetGuy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast. And QA stands for question and answer. That one's pretty easy, because we like to make this an interactive discussion when we go live. It's also why I like to do my podcast on Mondays. We get to spend a little time digging through the news, not just what popped up in our feed, rushing to a Thursday or a Friday broadcast publication. Take a little time, kind of dig in. How do we feel about this news? Come back fresh over the weekend and have a fun conversation. I'm already seeing a terrific live chat. Charlie, Alisna, Abraham, Ruru2, Steve, Junkie, Memrenglot. I can't pronounce his name. Gary the Fireman. I believe we have the Discord working on this week's show. Apparently, it's going to be one of those things where every single time I broadcast, I'll have to reset the settings for Discord to show up in my live chat feed. But we'll see if we can keep this going. I also have to warn you guys, fair warning, I've already had 2 blue screens of death on my computer this morning. The most recent Windows upgrade does not seem to be doing well on my current workstation. So fingers crossed we can make it through a 2-hour broadcast, because we got a lot of news to talk about. I want to. Charlie Spirit Song already beat me to the joke. What's the over/under on housekeeping this week? 12 to 15 minutes. What is it? 9:02. All right, housekeeping. This weekend was my birthday. I am now finally legally allowed to drink alcohol. I've wondered all this time what beer tastes like. That's totally a lie. I'm not yet quite 40, but I'm definitely not 38 anymore. So, had a phenomenal weekend. Did a lot of just family outings. My daughter, she's about to turn 4, was super proud of herself for helping mommy bake my cake, and had to have that sit down with her. Is like, I want you to remember, this is the first time I've ever had a birthday cake made by my daughter. And she kind of got a little smirky face. It's super adorable when something kind of breaks through that toddler, sort of rambunctiousness, and she's, emotionally there with me. So we had a beautiful weekend. We got to visit one of my favorite haunts. Finally, Lex was sort of old enough to play around at the Peterson Museum in Southern California, which is an amazing car museum. And they've just expanded this whole little kids section. So she was building Lego racers and, drawing her favorite cars. And of course, they've got a life-size display of Lightning McQueen from Cars. So it was a really fun weekend. I ate way too much food. I'm crazy off my diet, but I kind of feel like, even with my slowing metabolism, I've got to do that every now and then lest I go crazy. Oh, and I'm also wearing the shirt. I got a new Peterson shirt. Look at that. Happy birthday to me. And then other than that, it was a lot of non-tech for my birthday. The thing about the job that I do is, like, family and friends are like, hey, what are you wanting? What are you into? I'm like, I could really use new socks. I do not need anything with a battery in it. I'm surrounded by too many batteries. Memrenglot, it's cheat day, birthday, some gadget guy, it's okay. Geet Madden 1991, good beer is happiness. That is absolutely true. I'm long overdue imbibing on a nice stout, or even just like a nice crisp honey lager would be really good right about now. Please drink responsibly. And Aditya Anil, happy birthday, Juan. Matt Tyler, new hat. Actually, this one's an old hat. This is a deep cut, bringing this one back. It's one of my non-Kangles, and I haven't worn it for a while, so I like to trot out some of the older hats. I think I need to get back into pork pies. Pork pies were my original jam. Little short brims, kind of looking like Mother from Rounders, so something like that. Is this a new lens or a new angle point of view? I missed the top of your IKEA shelf. So remember how I was saying I'd kind of fixed up most of my camera issues? The tripod thread on the camera that I'm shooting on right now finally completely died. And so the only tripod I can get to sort of stick to the bottom of this camera before I send it in for service is a lot taller than the tripod I usually use, which is just usually slightly under my eye level. Now it's slightly over my eye level. And I don't have an AC adapter yet for my nicer camera, my new Panasonic G9. So I can't run the show off of batteries. I can't do a 2-hour broadcast on that camera with batteries and then have to manage a battery swap. So I have an AC adapter on order. And once that comes in, then I should be able to go back to my normal desktop setup. Ruru 2, a roll of duct tape will fix anything. If I had a mirror to show you, I've got 3 rubber bands crisscrossing just to make sure the camera doesn't fall off. This is the worst. All right, 10 minutes. I've got 9 minutes left for housekeeping, but this is going to be an easy week for housekeeping. I am wrapping up my last week with the Sony Xperia 1. The thing that always makes me very anxious about loaner phones is I've got to pack way more usage into a much shorter period of time, and that I'm less likely to I don't want to have to go and buy a case and a screen protector for this thing to really use the phone as aggressively as I would for doing the camera and audio reviews out in the field. The phone is terrifying to use outside without a case on. Most phones are actually pretty terrifying, in my opinion, glass-on-glass sandwiches to use without a case on. So I haven't gotten as many videos out as I would like, but I have been shooting up a storm, so now hopefully I can just edit and get those videos published. I've been sort of supplementing that with a few headphone reviews. I've got the Rubik's Cube review, that's shot. And then, because this weekend LG sent over the V50, I did rush out a video over the weekend doing a comparison on the manual camera, the Pro camera features. So that should be public this afternoon. It's already live on the Patreon. It went up yesterday on the Patreon. So if you're early access, you can catch that video now. But for housekeeping, I did get a couple videos out and just want to screen share real quick. So the first video I wanted to talk about was this notion of aspect ratios on the Sony Xperia 1. And so you catch a lot of commentary from people casually using terms and often incorrectly. So I just wanted to set the record straight. What is letterboxing? And because I feel a lot of people see any type of cropping on their screen and go, oh, look at the letterboxing. And like, no, there is actually a different term depending on whether or not the black bars are vertical or horizontal. And these things help. These things matter to the conversation when we're discussing, like what you actually get on the display. But one of the main reasons why I wanted to focus on that for the Sony Xperia 1 is because this is such a tall and skinny device, it has a slightly different ergonomic issue. So, like, when you're holding it, obviously there's a different ergonomic sense to how you're going to navigate the phone. But then when you're watching content, there's a different feel because of how tall and skinny the display is. It works phenomenally well for cinema-wide, wider aspect ratio content. So especially if you're watching movies. And I don't think a lot of people realize that when they watch cinema-wide content on a phone, it's letterboxing. It's maybe not letterboxing as much because a lot of Android phones are now wider than 2x1. You've heard about like 18:9 displays. I think we kicked that off with the LG G6. And now Samsung, they kind of move back and forth. They were 19.5:9. Now they're just 19:9. And we didn't really feel like that was some kind of extreme step. But going from 19:9 to 21:9, oh no, the bigger black bars on the Sony. Oh, I can't handle that content. Now there's so much, there are like 10 extra pixels of black bar on my screen. How can I watch YouTube like that? Junkie, I'm totally guilty of this one, though. Juan, how about the infamous headphone jack when people are clearly talking about the female port on a phone? Jack equals male. I've given up that fight. I totally appreciate the terminology and the clarification, but I'm I am now completely guilty of just referring to everything colloquially, bro caught that one, as headphone jack. And 3.5 millimeter port doesn't have the same ring to it as headphone jack from LFA Reviews. Vasicos 8, doesn't the Panasonic G9 charge via USB? It can charge via USB, but unless I'm doing something terribly wrong, it doesn't seem to be able to power over USB. So like if the camera's off, I can plug it in and it charges the battery in the camera. But if I turn the camera on, it still seems to just run off the battery. So you still kind of need to get one of those battery block AC adapter replacements. So Memringlat, the fact is many YouTubers are actually doing 2.35 to 1 videos, if I recall correctly, or 21:9, are also known as cinematic wide. And again, it's just one of those things. I feel it's an inconsistency in a lot of tech reviewing. Suddenly we notice black bars on the Xperia 1 because the effect is slightly more pronounced. But it's not a radically different experience than if you're firing up a Note. We didn't seem to notice black bars on the Note. We only seem to notice this as some kind of detriment when it's not a Samsung. And then suddenly we decry this as some kind of deal breaker. All right, real quick, another bit of housekeeping. This video is getting trashed on YouTube, YouTube's algorithm right now. And it's very frustrating because I absolutely adore this headset. I did a review of the Sennheiser GSP 670 wireless gaming headset. If you had any concerns about wireless gaming gear, latency, lag, audio quality, a company like Sennheiser does a phenomenal job of assuaging those concerns. You can turn those concerns off. This is a premium buy, so this is not like a cheap impulse buy, but it's pretty astounding audio quality and lag-free audio support for both the mic and the audio channels. That review went up in the middle of last week, and of course, because it kind of came in the middle of the onslaught of Samsung videos hitting YouTube for tech, almost no traffic on that video, which again, I find to be a bummer. And talking to a few people, a few of my friends who I know have smashed that bell icon, another video that was almost completely not notified. People who not only were subscribed to my channel but had smashed that bell icon, no notifications on this. When I shared it, it was a surprise to almost everybody that I even made this video. So yet another example, YouTube algorithms getting in between content creators and their audience, and just we can always use as much help as we can get in signal boosting and sharing the word, because the algorithm only seems to piggyback on something what is already popular. And you would think like keywords, Sennheiser, gaming, video game headset, wireless gaming, stuff like that would help resonate. But no, this video got smashed. I don't even know that it's broken 1,000 views yet. And for all of my non-Galaxy Note videos, I don't think any of them have broken 3,000 views since the Note launched. Apparently, the only thing we're supposed to talk about is the Galaxy Note. And I would like to think we could disagree, but the algorithm is in control. Tech Rant channel, the video will do better over time. I seriously doubt it. Again, what's going on with this current flavor of algorithm is if it wasn't popular in that immediate tentpole spike, it's not going to be recommended for search as often. It's not going to be positioned and recommended as often. And then over time, it's still going to just get whatever kind of organic exact title search we might find for it. So technically, the video's pretty much dead. All the work that went into making it, to, making my thumbnail, writing out the description, working with Sennheiser, putting together what I thought would be a high quality examination of this video, it will never perform well enough to justify the amount of time that was spent on it, let alone even Sennheiser sending it to me to review. So that's a bummer. And that's exactly the kind of situation or scenario we face with this algorithmic sorting from YouTube is, you are literally punished for not talking about what's immediately popular in the zeitgeist. Unless you've got a channel where people are automatically signal boosting everything you do. So, let's see. I've got a lot of Charlie Spirit Song, Raise a Toast for LFA Reviews. Matt Tyler, LFA stealing your spotlight, Juan. No, I want everyone to go and subscribe to LFA. And he ran into the same thing. I loaned him the Aerodynamic Lagoons, and it was just a little off brand for the videos that he's already produced on his channel. And that video didn't perform very well for him either, even though that's another company that should deserve that would deserve a bit more attention and a bit more conversation. And TK Bays watching on Periscope. What's up, TK? So that's housekeeping. I'm going to have links to a lot of other things too. The videos from last week and the week before are all videos that didn't get any attention, that didn't get any notifications, that got stomped on by the most popular tech topics. But I still think that they are some fun things to watch as we round up summer and we're starting to get into all of the new phone releases coming out for fall. And a part of that is going to be what we're going to be discussing coming into the end of this video. LG V50, my first weekend with that. So have your questions for Xperia 1 and LG V50 handy, and we'll talk about that as we get to the end of the show. So, oh yeah, Gary the Fireman keeping me on point for my housekeeping. I feel like the last 2 weeks have been good for housekeeping. I could stop this podcast for the next 5 minutes and still be doing better than previous runs of housekeeping. All right, moving right along. This is going to be a slightly politics-heavy first half of the podcast. Aditya Anil, sorry, just to interrupt, didn't get the notification for the gaming headphone video on YT. Thank goodness for Patreon. Also, the previous SGG QA video on YouTube. What's up with those dislikes? More than the usual handful. Well, actually, that's kind of not... That shouldn't be unexpected. I stopped live streaming on YouTube, and people see a 2-hour video, and they're not very likely to engage positively with that. And another part of that is, too, like, I really, literally do not have the time to go through and timecode any of these videos. And the offer still stands. Anyone who would like to help me timecode, we can chat. I will absolutely pin any comment with good timecodes on YouTube, but I can't. I'm literally down to individual minutes of how I'm testing products, shooting videos, writing scripts, editing, rendering, uploading. I can't go back for the podcast for YouTube, especially when YouTube is one of the least grateful audiences for putting out any type of content right now. And really, when it comes to engaging in the comments, I'm literally down to just weeding out terrible, toxic comments that make it through YouTube's filter. And other than that, I'm really not participating like I used to, just because I don't have the time. I don't have the time to make YouTube a part-time job when YouTube can't share or notify or support or work halfway with the kind of content that we're hoping to produce and diversify. That we're not just making the same video over and over and over again about the Note 10 and the iPhone 11. There's nothing to say about the iPhone 11. It's not out yet. I don't care what the rumors or the leaks are. That's not news. So, let's get in. Let's jump in. I could do a whole 2-hour broadcast airing my grievances over YouTube and algorithms, and I will probably mention that again moving forward. So, let's get this out of the way here. And we've got to keep covering some politics. The media tends to portray tech topics in a very simplistic and binary fashion. Something worked, something didn't. Something happened, something didn't. And the commentary surrounding... the story is going to be about the T-Mobile and Sprint merger. I am very apprehensive. It makes me very anxious when major corporations staple their consumer bases together at the expense of competition. I feel most of the problems in the United States as it pertains to commerce would probably be solved with better competition and infrastructure that supports competition, not political policy that allows for easier regionalized monopolies. Not that Sprint and T-Mobile merging is going to create a monopoly, but it reduces the amount of competition. It will probably lead to a number of jobs being axed as there's redundancy between the two companies. And because of the way that certain approvals have already passed through, it's been discussed as if it's a foregone conclusion. I really do genuinely believe this merger is going through. But it's not done yet. And so we shouldn't be talking about it in the media like it's done. And that's the point of this first article. There are a number of news outlets that kind of covered this, but why link to a news article when we can go directly to the letter written by United States Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, urging the FCC to seek additional public input on the T-Mobile Sprint merger. From the actual letter, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust, Competition Policy, and Consumer Rights, called on the Federal Communications Commission to issue a public notice and seek public comment on the proposed merger between T-Mobile, T-Mobile US Incorporated, parenthetical T-Mobile, and Sprint Corporation, parenthetical Sprint, in light of the proposed final judgment and a stipulation in order consent decree recently filed by the Department of Justice. Last month, the department concluded that the proposed T-Mobile Sprint merger would substantially lessen competition and harm consumers and filed a civil antitrust lawsuit challenging the transaction. At the same time, the department filed the consent decree, settling the lawsuit by agreeing to terms that would require the divestiture of significant business assets to Dish and allegedly resolving their competitive concerns with the proposed merger. So this is an interesting back and forth. The DOJ, that department, issued out a statement saying these two companies coming together would probably be bad for the market at large. Reducing competition when we already have so few major players in the space would probably be bad. And we're looking at some significant issues and some significant preferential treatment for MVNOs, where those two companies combined would represent over 50% of the MVNO market. MVNO, for those of you, mobile virtual network operator, the low-cost or prepaid carriers, Boost, Virgin, I'm spacing on other ones, but basically companies that piggyback on major networks and have their own relationships. Google's Fi is an MVNO, which, funnily enough, piggybacks on Sprint and T-Mobile. It was funny, like going through this merger would literally not affect my current plan or pricing at all. It's the same networks. So we have a group of senators. Hold on, the list is right here. Klobuchar is the one who penned this letter. Supported by Ed Markey, Tammy Baldwin, Tom Udall, Cory Booker, Richard Blumenthal, Elizabeth Warren, and Kirsten I can't pronounce her name. Gillibrand. Gillibrand. I thought I was going to stumble on Kirsten because that's one of my stutter words. I can't say the name Kirsten unless I make it deliberate, but Gillibrand messed me up just as bad. So they've all come together to write this letter seeking public comment. The reason why this merger is a foregone conclusion is the current leadership of the FCC in no way responds to anything from public comments. And we've seen that the FCC has had a sort of a vested interest in making public comments as insecure as possible. It's when we were going through the net neutrality debates, those public comments were rife for spoofing, for identity theft, for echo chambering comments from outside bad actors. When even Barack Obama is posting a public comment through the FCC against net neutrality, we can be pretty sure that the public commenting system for the FCC has been gamed by bad actors. I am happy to see a handful of elected officials still trying to engage in some kind of public discussion. Like, we have a history of this kind of leadership and community organization, right? But right now we have people in charge of regulatory agencies in this current administration that don't seem to be engaged in good faith with the traditions of this type of public commentary. We're a long way away from the Tom Wheeler days. If you remember, this is a deep cut because I want to say it was probably over 10 years ago, where the FCC started talking about fast lanes, and we had an open public comment round of public comments, and Tom Wheeler backtracked and then got back on board the open internet order, which would become Title II regulation of the internet, the 1 year of net neutrality that we didn't really get. So from this quote from the letter, man, words are hard today. I'm going to go back into screen share just for those of you who want to try and read along too. As we have previously stated, we have major antitrust concerns regarding the impact of the proposed T-Mobile-Sprint merger on consumers, competition, and the public interest. We remain concerned about the lack of transparency in the FCC's merger review process and the lack of certainty on whether this merger will protect competition and consumers. For those reasons, we urge the FCC to issue a public notice and seek public comment on the proposed merger as altered by the consent decree and the terms set forth in Dish's extension request letter prior to its consideration of the merger to determine if this transaction is in the public interest. The public should be able to trust that the FCC's process is fair, transparent, and based on a thorough examination of all the relevant evidence. Sorry, I couldn't help that little bit of a chuckle. I think we're all pretty clear that the FCC, the current leadership in the FCC, Ajit Pai, and the ranking, the majority chair people on the FCC, probably not super into fairness, probably leaning towards whatever these multi-billion-dollar corporations want them to do. So, from Ruru 2, you mean Trump didn't drain the swamp, but added more swampy dudes? Yeah, kinda, sorta. Matt Tyler, no competition in the market is not a good thing. Prices would go up and up because there is nowhere else to go. So, I do genuinely believe that a T-Mobile Sprint merger probably won't have an immediate impact on consumer pricing. You still, in most major markets, T-Mobile is still going to have to go up against AT&T and Verizon. But with 3 companies in the space, it gets a little bit easier to, off the books, agree on what 5G pricing should look like, right? Whether or not we believe that there is collusion between these companies to fix pricing for certain wireless technologies, it's a bit easier for 3 companies to say, oh, well, look what Verizon's charging. We can charge that much. And then AT&T can say, oh, but if T-Mobile is going to charge that much, then our network's better. We can charge just a little bit more. And you can kind of keep lobster potting between the 3. That's why T-Mobile was so exciting when they were the 4th place carrier, because they got a ton of money from AT&T through that failed merger to act as a disruptor. And they were able to shake up the market. Now they'll be a market leader, and Sprint's customer base piggybacking on top of that means we're less likely to see the radical disruption. And it'll be a couple years before Dish Network can leverage their investment in Spectrum, because they bought a lot of air. We thought they were just going to lease it or auction it back off as an asset. But if they're going to join this in earnest, they've got bandwidth to do it. It's just going to be a couple years before they can realize that investment. Over those couple years, we would have to see. But I think it's probably likely that we're not going to see any substance, any conversation of substance over this. The FCC not likely to engage the public in earnest for any type of discussion, and we'll be moving right along. But I did feel it was important because this didn't get a ton of traction. Senators openly talking about a technological issue, trying to talk about the business and the economics of major corporation mergers, but it's one of those geeky, wonky, nerdy things that really won't stick on a traditional news outlet. Even like there was a CNBC story about it. And you're like, that's not really the tone of the letter that Klobuchar was trying to accomplish. And you took like 2 lines of this letter to Chairman Pai and kind of misrepresented what she had to say. So, Ruru 2, this is going to be like 3 RAM manufacturers price fixing. We need China to investigate these 3 companies because the U.S. government ain't going to do it. That is a very good analogy. A little less impact on the global market, but huge impact on the United States market, where again, it gets a lot easier when there are only 2 or 3 companies operating in one space to kind of work together on what their competition might resemble. They're not really fighting each other. They're all making sure that they're not undercutting each other. RAM price fixing should absolutely be a bigger deal than it is in this space. Okay, another story. I just caught this morning on BBC. My wife likes to watch BBC News in the mornings. Again, the sort of more mainstream commentary, we would have thought that this ban on Huawei was over. But it isn't. There's still apparently going to be, a ban on Huawei products, but we're kicking the can down the road another 90 days. Again, if we had any faith in this administration for making those deals and having the tough talk and negotiating, zero faith in that ever being something that we should trust from this current political administration. So, the U.S. delays Huawei trade ban for another 90 days, coming by way of BBC News. Who wrote this up? Oh, they don't have a byline on BBC News. Interesting. Okay. More of a Reuters feed. The U.S. blacklisted the company in May because of national security concerns. Huawei was then granted a temporary permit in order to ease the transition, which was due to expire today. However, Mr. Ross added a further 46 Huawei affiliates. However, Mr. Ross added a further 46 Huawei affiliates would now be added to the U.S. entity list, a blacklist of firms with which the U.S. will not trade. The reprieve was designed to allow companies such as Google to trade with Huawei while adjusting to the restrictions. And Mr. Ross said the extension would help U.S. customers. Quote, we're giving... Why are you selecting the whole article? Quote, we're giving them a little more time to wean themselves off. On Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump said Huawei was a company we may not do business with at all, which some had interpreted as signaling the reprieve would not be extended. So we don't even have consistent internal messaging on what's going on with Huawei. President Trump, what was it at the G8, right? He sat down with leadership from China, had one of those meetings where suddenly he was buddy-buddy with Xi Jinping. Oh, yeah, we're going to make sure we're looking at Huawei. We're going to flip on the switch again for Huawei. We're going to get farmers those subsidies so they can buy soybeans in China again. Then none of that ever really happened. And apparently now, quietly, with no word from the administration and very little coverage in the tech space, not only has the ban not been lifted, but we're adding more Huawei affiliate companies to the ban list and just given consumers a little extra time to wean themselves off. When we talked about the ban last, it was a couple weeks back, this is exactly the kind of inconsistency in the market which does a tremendous amount of damage. And cavalierly talking about banning a corporation like Huawei from doing business in the United States, it has a significant impact. It has a domino effect on a ton of industries. And we still haven't been given the substantive proof. There have been a few other stories recently talking about some security concerns, Huawei products, where servers are located for different types of Huawei services. There is a little smoke worth investigating. But we haven't been given any of the evidence to suggest that these security concerns are really the issue why we're going to try and sever Huawei from doing business with the rest of the world on a blacklist like this. It's a very frustrating story to cover, and the media has been doing another example of the media doing a terrible job of trying to keep pace with this. The ramifications from this and the fallout from this will be much, much larger than just, oh, guess you can't buy a P30. Like, I really hate how reductive these conversations are. And again, I use a word like cavalier, but mostly because I really doubt that the top members of this administration really fully understand the business ramifications. Again, we're talking about a president that couldn't find a way to make a casino profitable. I seriously doubt he's got the business acumen to understand the ripple effect that he's about to engage with. Not only just for the tech space and the companies that do business with Huawei directly for manufacturing parts, but how much money it's going to cost to keep paying farmers to not sell goods in China, as one example of continued agricultural fallout from these types of business shenanigans. Rosted. The media. Matt Tyler, Huawei are going. Blah, blah, blah. Matt Tyler says Huawei's going ahead with 5G here. They have already started the rollout. We covered this story on the podcast too. MI5 found no unmanageable security threats with Huawei networking infrastructure equipment. Like, I want to see evidence. I want to know that I'm making good recommendations to the people that follow me and when I'm reviewing products and stuff. But I don't know. The way that this has been bandied back and forth and kind of badminton popped around, it doesn't make me feel like, again, that this administration is earnestly concerned about security and is more trying to play some sort of tough talking game using these corporations as leverage in a negotiating battle that I'm not sure what the end game is supposed to look like. So I'm pretty sure we'll lose if this is the type of negotiating strategy our top officials are going to employ. And following up on that story, because we're seeing tough posturing on companies like Huawei, we can be pretty sure China is going to retaliate, and that's gonna spike the interest of a company like Apple. So we shouldn't be too surprised that Apple CEO Tim Cook warns Trump that China tariffs would boost its main rival Samsung. This is coming by way of Business Insider. Written up by Shauna Ghosh and Reuters, using part of a Reuters feed. President Donald Trump said on Sunday that he had spoken with Apple CEO Tim Cook, not Tim Apple, Tim Cook, about the impact of U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports as well as competition from South Korean company Samsung. Trump said Cook, quote, made a good case, end quote, that tariffs could hurt Apple given that Samsung's products would not be subject to those same tariffs. Tariffs on an additional $300 billion worth of Chinese goods, including consumer electronics, are scheduled to go into effect in 2 stages on September 1st and December 15th. The levies will impact Apple's range of laptops, the iPhone, AirPods, the Apple Watch, and the HomePod smart speaker. That could potentially lead to price rises and make Apple's devices considerably more expensive than those offered by its main competitor, Samsung. Sorry, again, I shouldn't be openly laughing at the way that this is being covered, as if Apple products typically weren't already more expensive than somewhat comparable Samsung products. But again, I have a philosophical frustration with Tim Cook. We've talked about Tim Cook's desires for, sort of a brighter or a happier political commentary. He's talking about how the tech industry is problematic and he's out there fighting the good fight, and he wants to represent, Apple as this beacon for privacy and for community. And he turns to this presidential administration and kind of plays the xenophobia card a little bit, that Apple is an American company, even though they don't really pay taxes like an American company should, and they've got a huge tax haven in Ireland, and they're technically an Irish company. But Apple is an American company employing Americans and American businesses, and they have brick and mortar stores in America. Well, man, because we chose to entertain the sort of lowest common denominator manufacturing costs, and Tim Cook is really good at operations, so he's really padding the profit margin on iPhones with the manufacturing and labor costs. But because we chose to do business in China, well, wouldn't it be scary if a South Korean company started outperforming us, or was more competitive because of these Chinese tariffs? I mean, wouldn't that be bad if Samsung, like, what wasn't affected by these tariffs because of China? I kind of have a hard time philosophically with this one, that, you know, I want to support messaging from Tim Cook when he's talking about, you know, like these aspirational ideas and how to more responsibly do business. But then watching that, you know, oh no, Chinese tariffs coming in 2 weeks. These tariffs are going to make the iPhone slightly less profitable. It's going to impact our profit margins. Boogeyman, South Korea. Ooh, scary, Samsung. I don't really like that. I feel like there's a better way to message that. But again, now it's business, and Tim Cook, operations guy, business, money, profits, that's his jam. So a little consultation with this current administration to work in favor of Apple's business. Sure. He made some very good points. I'm sure Trump totally understood and appreciated, again, the spider web networked impact of doing business with companies that do business with China. So it's pretty great. Goran Petrovic, all around the world, innocent ones will suffer higher prices and slower supply. Well, USA made globalization. USA is now screwing the world who fell for it. From Ruru 2, Samsung already owns the Asian market. And Ronio 266, fun fact, Samsung has their own militia. I did not know that. And get that out of the way there. So, continued developments on China, tariffs, Huawei. I think those all kind of go hand in hand. But I think one of the more immediate and pressing stories that came out over this last week, especially as it pertains to Apple, was another battery issue where the FAA is now getting involved. So this one's coming by way of CNBC, and I'm purposely pointing this one out. Again, I mentioned before, CNBC not doing a great job on tech coverage. Talking about the Apple battery ban, still not doing a great job on tech coverage. Again, I feel like part of my podcast is about media literacy now, right? Looking at general trends to say, how are we appropriately talking about tech in the consumer marketplace, and what bad ideas or ill-informed ideas are consumers getting by the way we talk about technology in this space. CNBC, doing a heck of a job. So, why Apple doesn't want users to replace their own batteries. Written up by Kif Leswig on CNBC. Let's get into the article. Oh, and I love that they've got the Tim Cook adjusting his glasses picture to make it look like he's like holding his temple, or he's hiding his face, or he's shamed, when he was probably just adjusting his glasses. So, you know, again, there's nothing clickbaity or manipulative about this article. 2 recent incidents involving Apple products show a growing risk to the company's brand, the lithium-ion batteries that power its devices. That sentence doesn't even make any sense. Sorry. First, the Federal Aviation Administration disclosed last week that some Apple laptops have been banned from flights. This comes after Apple recalled some 15-inch MacBook Pro laptop models because the batteries inside the computers pose a fire hazard. The official recall put into motion a regulatory apparatus designed to prevent a rogue gadget from bursting into flames on a flight. The bottom line is that if any battery from any company is recalled, it must not be carried aboard or checked in luggage on an aircraft until it's been repaired by the manufacturer, says the Federal Aviation Administration. Quote, the FAA is aware of the recalled batteries that are used in some Apple MacBook Pro laptops. In early July, we alerted airlines about the recall and we informed the public. Separately, Apple responded to an uproar when customers discovered that it really doesn't want them replacing their own batteries. Repair experts discovered that a menu inside the iPhone settings app will display a warning message if the iPhone battery wasn't replaced by an Apple Store or authorized servicer. iFixit, which creates repair guides and sells parts and tools, suggested that Apple was trying to prevent any shops without battery authorization from replacing batteries. So, I mean, some wonky sentence structure notwithstanding, to this point, that's kind of a fair breakdown. There's going to be pandemonium for people who travel with Apple laptops trying to fly and then verify, oh no, this isn't one of those Apple laptops. This is one of the good ones. The last time you've flown in the United States, how confident were you in the TSA agent at the X-ray machine to understand the nuances and the subtle differences between tech products that look exceedingly similar? We kind of went through this with the Note 7, right? When the Note 7 started exploding, anything Samsung was immediately questioned, and people started acting like, oh no, you're bringing a bomb on my plane with your Galaxy S6. I heard Galaxy. I heard Samsung batteries explode. The public has not been informed. The public largely, because I had a few family members who had MacBooks in around that age range, and I had to individually email them directly links to things like the Apple service and warranty pages for the recall so they could check their serial number. This is not somehow consumer common knowledge. This isn't a well-informed public, and it gets a little less well-informed. But we did talk last week about that Apple plan to serial number code their batteries so that not only could you not replace a battery with a third-party battery, you can't even replace a battery with another Apple battery. So let's say you pull the battery out of one iPhone and you try and put it in another iPhone, the software is going to see that serial codes don't match, so it's not going to turn on all of the battery saver and battery health monitoring services, and it's going to give you a scary pop-up that you have an unauthorized battery replacement in your phone. So Apple verified that part, but you didn't use the Apple Genius Repair Center software to switch over the serial codes, so it's not going to work. Battery replacement's not going to work. So CNBC going on to cover, because again, this is why Apple doesn't want users to replace their own batteries. They've explained all the problems. So what's their first bullet point? This is what you got to know. Fake batteries cause problems. That's why Apple doesn't want you to be able to replace your battery on your own or through any kind of third-party organization. Fake replica batteries that look authentic are a growing problem, not only for Apple, but many electronics companies, said Nadim Malouf, CEO of Qnovo, which makes software that monitors the health and flow of power inside batteries for devices, including Android phones. Fake batteries. The second reason, a small percentage of a huge number. Even if a small percentage of batteries end up having problems, that can still translate to a surprisingly large number. Apple's recall affected 430,000 laptops sold in the United States, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Apple received 26 reports of the battery overheating, or roughly 6 out of every 100,000 laptops. But it only takes one video of a smoking laptop to go viral. So, Apple doesn't want you to be able to service or replace your battery because it's only a small number of people affected. That's it. Those are the two reasons. That's why Apple doesn't want you to replace your battery, according to CNBC. Fake batteries and fake news. It's not that there are problems. It's that you saw too many videos of a limited number of devices with problems. That's the problem. If we just didn't let videos go viral, then there wouldn't be a problem. Ruru 2. This FAA warning is sponsored by Apple. Apple, we're an American company. America, we don't buy Samsung. I feel I do not have any solid, concrete evidence from insiders sharing private communique in mega corporations, but I feel like there could be other reasons why a company like Apple would have a vested interest in not allowing you to repair your gadget and not allowing third-party resellers to keep older gadgets running for longer. I don't know. It's a complete mystery why a capitalist, aggressively ecosystemed corporation would want you to buy new gadgets sooner than you probably would need to. Call me crazy. I know, tinfoil hat, total conspiracy theory wonking right now. But maybe, just maybe, there could be some other reasons why Apple doesn't want you to repair their batteries. So CNBC could have tapped the CBC story. They could have looked at some of the other repair shops that have been putting out their own video commentary. And Louis Rossmann is someone we talk about on this channel regularly, but there are other YouTubers who are talking about what it's like to actually repair gadgets. If you don't want to go for sort of the rantiness of Rossmann's YouTube channel. And this just felt like a regurgitation of some Apple press releases from CNBC. So that's disappointing. Again, doing a heck of a job there, CNBC, covering that tech stuff. Gary the Fireman, Apple loves Samsung panels, though, and don't try and replace one of those panels on your own because Apple won't let you. And again, it'll probably brick your phone. We couldn't even replace the home button when the home button would break. Ruru 2, get Louis Rossmann on the phone for a 4-hour rant. He'll cut it up into smaller pieces for his YouTube channel. Like he's down to like 10, 15-minute videos for most of his videos now. From Rosted, are those reasons legit, or is it a way from them to control price and who can access the device? The thing that sucks is there is truth to that, right? I think a corporation would have concerns over how their products would be maintained and repaired. I think that's fair to say, like we don't want our consumers to do business with, unlicensed shops that maybe source parts that aren't as high a quality as what we would source. Not that I think Apple's selection process is really so much better than even like a OnePlus. Like I don't feel like the experience is so much better on an iPhone when you compare things like display and battery quality and all that other stuff. But I do believe companies would have an interest in examining what their consumers are doing because I think that there is a profitability discussion to be had for things like repairs. It's not going to be a significant chunk of your income, but you could make money on the repair process. You could monetize that in a way that's a benefit to your company and provides a good service to your consumers. But the problem that we have with Apple and what we've talked about on this podcast in the past is Apple is very aggressive about pushing older products off of their repairability timeline. When a product goes end of life, you can't take it to a Genius Bar and get it serviced beyond a certain date. Once it's starts cycling over into newer product lines, Apple is very aggressive about pressuring consumers to upsell, to buy new, and to flip a gadget. So that consumer who wants to fix like their much, much older MacBook, but it's still perfectly adequate for their needs, is going to get the hard sell. Man, you got to get rid of this thing. It's old. And will likely be encouraged, aggressively encouraged, to buy a product they don't really need to buy when a repair should be less cost intensive than buying a whole new computer. It contributes to e-waste. It contributes to the disposability of our gadgets. And it also encourages a manufacturing process that makes it increasingly more difficult to get inside these things and to repair them. From where we were from early iPhones and MacBooks 10 years ago to where we are today, it's a much more daunting task. It's one of the things I love about that crazy little Huawei MacBook Air clone is it's super thin. The chassis is a little creaky, but it's 10 screws. 10 screws, and you pop off the bottom and you have full access to cleaning out the fans, swapping the SSD, replacing the battery if you can get a battery replacement for that notebook. That's it. You don't have to potentially bend a sealed frame and a glued shut logic board and a screen that's fused to the panel. 10 screws. And I wish we could get back to more of that, because I feel these purchases would go a lot longer if they weren't built with this planned obsolescence in mind. And that's why the right to repair campaign has become something I've become so passionate about. It's because we're just making a lot of garbage. Literally, we're making a lot of mess. And I don't feel like we've gotten to a point where the recycling on this stuff can really hang with the mountains of garbage that we're creating. And a lot of this stuff is really precious material. It takes a lot of human strife to get this crap out of the ground. And then, I smashed another phone. I'll just get it replaced. And you're like, see, we play a part in this too, but man, we should really be encouraging phones to laptops to desktops, running these things for as long as we humanly can before junking them and getting rid of them. It's a difficult topic to kind of address. We're sort of programmed for the fast flip new shiny, so it's a bummer. From Memranglot, speaking of recycling and reuse stuff, my best purchases this year are for my ThinkPad X240 for $170 and Radeon 570 for $70. Great deals. That is a good deal on an old ThinkPad. Very nice. I love those old. I really miss the old T30 series of IBM ThinkPads, but the Lenovo's are still hardcore little laptops. Good times. From Geet Madden 1991, I literally die a little bit when I watch a drop test. I hate gadget destruction porn videos. They don't inform. They do not achieve what they claim to. Someone does a drop test on a phone. The second you drop that phone once, it is now compromised. Further drops don't really inform what the durability of that gadget would be. And it kind of gets us around some, when a gadget does survive a drop onto concrete in one of those videos, or maybe it just gets a little scuffed, I think it encourages people to handle their devices in ways which aren't really safe. The second you see a glass-on-glass sandwich for your daily companion tech device, you've got to put a case on it. I never drop my phone. My phone never lags, and the battery's always awesome. And I've dropped it a dozen times on asphalt and into salt water, and it's always worked. BS. Don't play that game. Don't be that guy in my comments. So the thing I like about Jerry Rigs Everything, while he is still gadget destruction porn, I have to give him that extra bit of leeway on his assembly and disassembly videos that he at least makes an effort to put phones back together. His drop test videos are just as garbage as anyone else's drop test videos. Drop test videos are garbage. But when he's doing his what's inside the phone videos, I'm always impressed at how he manages to at least put some of these things back together again in a somewhat functional fashion. So that I want to give him some credit. Like, he actually knows what he's claiming to know and how it in how it matters to phone repair and disassembly. And I also really like his stance, like, hey, if you're going to glue the battery into a phone, then I can't recommend this phone because gluing a battery into a phone is a terrible business practice. So I'll give him that. But if you really want that informed commentary, I am a huge fan of iFixit. I think their write-ups are very detailed, or very nuanced, with like little bits of humor here and there when you see like some of the breakdown process on how these gadgets are disassembled. And they've been leading a big part of this conversation for taking some power back. I loved that they brokered a deal with Motorola to sell Motorola certified repair kits for their phones. Again, there are companies trying to do more responsible business, but to hear YouTube tell the tale, why should you ever talk about a Motorola product? The only thing that's going to do well for your SEO is Samsung, so you should only talk about Samsung. And that's a bummer. Anyway, one last little story here before we hit a break. This is another heavier topic, and we talked about this after the recent shootings here in the United States, where we had 36 hours of very dark news reports. But one of the follow-ups to that, the Trump administration recently came out and started a new conversation on the FCC and the FTC policing and regulating social media. And I think we can all agree that's a real bad idea. But I need to keep bringing these stories up and what politicians are saying about this type of regulation. Like video gaming and loot boxing, when video games push gambling into games that are targeted at younger audiences, like the music and movie industries back in the day, not properly informing parents as to the content of the material so parents could make informed decisions on what content to watch with their families. If the industry cannot police itself, politicians will get involved. We do not want politicians to get involved. We want to see more responsible business practices. The bummer for social media and for companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon to a degree, is the popularization and the weaponization of algorithmically popular content. That churn. We're going to keep feeding you the most toxic versions of stories that you respond to, because that's going to keep your eyeballs on our service longer. So the joke, 3 videos deep into YouTube and you're watching like Nazi propaganda, right? These companies can't keep having it both ways in claiming to hide behind being a distribution platform, so they're not responsible for the content that goes up on their service, and then still having a ton of editorial control as to what goes up on their service. I have a different feeling on a politician like Beto O'Rourke talking about regulation of the tech space. But whether it's coming from the left or whether it's coming from the right, this is a general practice we really don't want to see happen. This is a style of regulation that will be far too easy for bad actors in our political apparatus to manipulate. So someone like a Beto O'Rourke, I have every belief that he would walk into this space talking about regulating the tech sector with very good intentions. And then let's say he became president and he passed this legislation, and Facebook now has a completely different operating regulatory guideline to go under, and it's got to go through government channels, and it works perfectly because he is operating in good faith and he's open channels and he's working with Facebook, blah, 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 blah. The utopian ideal that somehow our government could clean up Facebook, right? The second Beto's out of office and someone else with darker political aspirations gets into there, then they will have all of the tools to completely manipulate the kind of content that we see on the internet. So again, I have a different feeling coming from Beto O'Rourke than I do from President Trump, but I still feel the final outcome on this type of regulatory action would probably be bad for consumers at large. So the point I'm getting at in the article that I'm going to share here, this is coming from Beto O'Rourke's website, BetoO'Rourke.com, and is a commentary on his plans to try and help stem gun violence. Titled Combating Hate and Violence in America. This isn't normal, and it doesn't have to be this way, but it will not change unless we face what's behind this epidemic of gun violence and connect the dots between hatred, racism, and white supremacy and the manifestations of that hatred through violence. We must connect the dots between this president locking children in cages, calling Latinx community members an infestation, and a white supremacist killer using the same language in an act of domestic terrorism, taking 22 lives in El Paso. We must connect the dots between a president who sought to ban Muslims from entering the United States and a mosque burning to the ground the very next day. We must connect the dots between internet communities providing a platform for online radicalization and white supremacy as propaganda outlets like Fox News fuel that fire, and the fact that hate crimes against Black and LGBTQ plus Americans are on the rise. So he's been very outspoken. This is an attack that happened on his home turf. And I would imagine emotions are very high. I would highly recommend reading through, I'm going to have all of the links that we talk about this week in the show notes for this podcast. I would highly recommend reading through his plans. There are a series of ideas here, and some of them I think have a lot of merit, and some of them would trouble me. The one that I feel qualified to speak on, I do not, even as a shooting sports instructor for the Boy Scouts, and I almost joined the NRA when I was younger, I don't feel qualified to fully address the full ramifications in business and community surrounding gun ownership and mental health and healthcare. Going to have to find that conversation on another podcast. But what I do feel qualified to talk about is one of his bullet points pertaining to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which we talked about when President Trump started stomping his feet about FCC and FTC intervention. So from Beto for America, he would amend Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Beto supports amending Section 230 of the CDA to remove legal immunity from lawsuits for large social media platforms that fail to change their terms of service and put in place systems as described above. Informational service providers of all sizes, including domain name servers and social media platforms, also would be held liable where they are found to knowingly promote content that incites violence. I don't know what that looks like. I do genuinely believe we need to find some new classification, regulatory apparatus, some type of intergovernmental task force that can work with these mega data collecting companies. But even when someone I largely agree with on the political spectrum just writes it out there and it's in black and white, and we just got to hold people liable for speech which could incite or promote violence, I just don't know how you do that, and how you do that with a margin of error that doesn't overly punish more than it protects. Something needs to change, and companies like Facebook and YouTube need to operate in a way where they don't get to game the system for their benefit when it suits them and then hide behind the CDA when it benefits them. And it's not even it's not even good for their advertisers. I mean, the recent changes on YouTube's platform haven't necessarily brought back advertisers to the fold. It's just kind of continuously punished smaller YouTube channels, while larger YouTube channels get to play fast and loose with these new rules and guidelines. Even there was a story I didn't talk about last week where a former YouTube employee was talking about internal communications where, their ability to police channels kind of stopped at like 1 million subscribers, and then those channels got to do kind of whatever they wanted. There's a lot that I like about Beto. There's a lot that I like about his conversation. Again, for being sort of adopted into the fold of Latino and Latinx communities, like, I think he does a pretty good job of representing those people that chose to elect him to represent them. We need to start having some other grown-up conversations, because this Section 230 is going to become increasingly problematic for everybody. Until we see a good faith vested effort from tech companies to start operating with a bit more transparency and finding a way to impact some of the communities that they still profit from, but they don't like to talk about. I think Reddit is a perfect example of that. Like, a community which can be extremely hateful and super toxic really only seems to be affected when it causes some gnarly headlines. The same thing we talked about, was it Cloudflare and 8chan 2 weeks ago, and how deplatforming 8chan from a website hosting service only really seemed to happen when we got bad headlines linking those companies with those problematic web services. I would have significant concerns over a government apparatus which would vet the quality of speech on things like social media platforms. I think it's an unwinnable fight to a degree, but we still need to try, and we still need to find some way of managing this. And it's another situation where I don't think tech companies are going to take this as seriously as they should. And then we're going to end up running right into an era of government censorship, because Google didn't really address the algorithm concerns on YouTube, because Facebook only played the lip service game of trying to make Facebook a little less toxic. And then we'll all be ranting and railing, oh, but government, terrible. But these companies didn't do it. Facebook didn't do it. YouTube didn't do it. Amazon still. I mean, we can make jokes every day about how Twitch is super inconsistent about applying their terms of service. You know, some channels seem to get away with some racy behavior, and other channels seem to get shut down fast over minor transgressions. So yeah, I bring these stories up not because I think I've got any great solution. I am literally telling you I have no idea what this might look like, but it's a continuing and evolving story with a lot of moving parts that we need to be paying attention to. This is like the very future of how we engage with public discourse and communication. These services are becoming the de facto standards and backbones of speech, and they're run by private corporations. There's a lot of messy stuff that we need to untangle, and it's probably going to need some type of minor re-examination of how we qualify speech and classify action as it pertains to speech in the 21st century. And I don't have a lot of faith in our current leadership to engage in those debates in earnest to arrive at healthy conclusions for the community. Couple comments on this, then we'll kick over and talk about some Reddit, because I just slammed Reddit. Ruru2, it'll just mean YouTube will stop recommending videos from channels that aren't vetted. Here comes the big media companies' takeover of YouTube. And I would say that's already happened. I mean, I can't fire up my YouTube without like Jimmy Kimmel being recommended in my feed. I think YouTube is pivoting to devalue smaller content creators and to only go with trusted content, and the easiest way to find trusted content is just to let NBC put up clips of The Tonight Show. So I think that's been a thing for a while. From Fat Produce, everyone say hey to Andrew Wallace. He's my buddy. You're all my buddies, but you know what I mean. He hosts a podcast that we've been on hiatus for because VR is hard. Fat Produce, what do you think about YouTube removing the ability for bad actors to maliciously monetize YouTube videos for frivolous music reasons? I thought it was a nice baby step in the right direction. I don't have, I'd have to pull it up, and I don't know the fastest way to find it. YouTube made a slight change to how copyright owners can declare copyright infringement and take the monetization off of other channels, I still feel like the best thing YouTube could do for the health of their community when it comes to copyright would be to put funds in escrow. So let's say Sony claims you're using music without the proper license. In the past, YouTube would just roll over for Sony and say, oh, you know, you're right, here's all their money. And then would just turn the monetization pipe from the creator over to Sony, and then would notify the creator, by the way, your video's not getting pulled, but all your money's going to Sony. You can try and dispute it, but you'll have to convince Sony to let you have the money back. We're not gonna get involved because we're YouTube. If they really cared about creators, I think as soon as there's a dispute like that, then funds should just go in a bucket. Keep serving ads, but don't just give the money to Sony. I'm using Sony as an example, obviously, but don't just give the money to the IP holder until you can ascertain whether this was a fair use situation. If it was a public broadcast situation, a number of content creators have had videos pulled because they're walking through an area and music was captured identifiably enough to trigger an automated system. So their step in minimizing the impact on automated systems, great. A nice one little step in the right direction towards addressing some of these issues. But the first, I think the main one is money. And then if it's found that a corporation is abusing the copyright system, then YouTube needs to get involved with some type of punitive action. They need to have some type of penalty for companies that abuse their systems and don't operate in good faith. All of those right now, all of those guns are targeted at smaller content creators, you know, under 1 million subscribers. There doesn't seem to be any significant impact or issue for larger ones. And again, if you have the money and you have the lawyers, you can sue a major corporation if it's found that they're abusing the DMCA. The FTC likes to get involved on stuff like that, but then you have to engage in a court battle with billionaire pockets. So it's very unlikely you'll win that fight. Even if you are in good standing and you do have, you know, sort of the law on your side, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're in the right. It only matters if you can sort of pay enough to convince a judge who probably doesn't know much about media licensing, IP disputes, and technology to see your side of it. A DTNL. Speaking of Sony, the Xperia 1! Flawless segue! All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break here. Because we got to talk about how we can. So I just bumped. I almost had like my computer monitor knock over my camera. Awesome. Because we got to talk about how we can support more diversity in tech commentary, and how we can encourage growth and help new content creators monetize and distribute and celebrate their content. And the main way to do that is participation. It is vital. It is critical that if you enjoy someone's content, that you do more than passively view. You need to find opportunities where you can share and comment and distribute for those content creators who don't have the same type of megaphone that a larger content creator has. And those larger channels are all looking to pivot too. MKBHD and Unbox Therapy, even though they're the darlings of YouTube, are all flipping over to do their own podcasts. The current YouTube model of just, I put up a video and it's passively consumed and then I make some ad revenue is dead. It is unsustainable. So if you want to find new voices and you don't want the tech landscape to be dominated by just 5 outlets, you need to be a part of it. You need to be an active participant in helping these channels grow. And it also gives you that opportunity to be a part of how they're creating their content. There are so many people, and a good chunk of them are in this live chat right now that are actively contributing to my future videos and editorials. They are a part of this content creation strategy that I rely on now for their insight, for their acumen, for, you know, they're helping to keep me honest. A lot of them fight with me, but it's all in love. This is moving forward how we're going to manage relationships. And what I like is that it kind of gets me back to what I loved about old school online forums. Every video I produce is a forum post, and then we have a conversation on that forum topic. It's not just, I made a commercial for the new Galaxy. Isn't it neat? You should buy one because it's expensive. I can't help myself. I'm really bitter pants about that. Okay, so one of the initiatives that I've taken on is creating a subreddit. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles, we are now over 400 members. We are 7 shy of 420. But it's a growing platform to try and help echo chamber, to try and help signal boost for people you think deserve more attention, and not just tiny little channels. We a couple months back, I didn't realize that Patrick Norton took Tech Thing off the air. They are not producing any new segments for Tech Thing. Patrick Norton is a classic voice in tech discussion, was producing a wonderful, high-quality half-hour weekly show. Again, like old school tech TV, you know, before G4 became a wrestling and Star Trek The Next Generation channel. This is a huge voice in the tech landscape. But, you know, his videos would only get like a couple thousand views. He was kind of leaning on a Patreon, but it really wasn't covering his bill. You'd try and share one of his videos, but people would be like, oh yeah, Patrick Norton, whatever, he's fine, he's doing fine. Well, now they're not making anymore. Tech Thing is gone. That was a great show. I loved that show. They can't do it alone. If Patrick Norton can't do it alone, what chance does a smaller creator have coming up in this space? Do you think Viper can beat Jimmy Kimmel when the YouTube feed pops up? Do you think YouTube's going to go, I really like that guy who screams like a WWE announcer. Let's put him ahead of Jimmy Fallon. No, that's not going to happen. We need to do it ourselves. We need to circumvent the algorithm. So reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. I hope you'll check it out. I hope you'll give it a spin. It's a community that I think has potential and has been growing week to week, every week. But these are the top stories. So the top 3. And again, super happy because there is a wealth of content on there, which far and away runs away from just the normal YouTube thinking of just make all your videos about Apple and Samsung. There is so much more content and so many more reviews and editorials to check out that are digging into other topics. And that makes me super happy that this subreddit really does reflect the conversations people want to have beyond just what's the most popular phone for YouTube search right now. So top 3 stories. First one, bringing up Viper. Captain of Team Apple, are AirPods bad for your hearing? With LFA reviews. So 2 of my favorite online content creators, my favorite person for Apple commentary, hosting a discussion with my favorite person for headphone commentary on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is hearing loss and the role that technology plays in hearing loss. And they have, I think it's about a 10-minute conversation talking about AirPods. And it got a really nasty response from the community. I was looped in on a bunch of tweets where people were like yelling at them and like, oh, this is clickbait. You're just clickbaiting. You just want to hate on Apple. So first of all, that's not what clickbait is. But second, this was a chill, informed conversation discussing a potential issue with our technology. This is an important conversation to have. I've interviewed audiologists. I've worked with professional in-ear monitor companies to try and popularize things like molded ear tips. I still review tons of earbuds, even though they do disastrous damage to my YouTube algorithm metrics. We are 10 years into some catastrophic trends on hearing loss in young people. It's no coincidence that the rise of hearing loss correlates very well with the transition from the iPod to the iPhone. I have to give these guys a huge thumbs up of glory for continuing to address this conversation, even though for Viper, it probably didn't do his channel well. It was probably a woefully underviewed video, not shared, not recommended, because we don't want to hear that. We should actually talk about the health ramifications of being constantly surrounded by technology, especially when that technology is doing permanent damage to one of your senses. Seems to me like that's a conversation worth having. Second top story on glowing rectangles is coming by way of JabberTech. Can't I just have one music subscription? It's 2019. I will always appreciate a good airing of grievances, though I do kind of disagree with the general premise of this discussion because I like more competition. I would like more players in music and distribution and media and services. I'm just saying. I can appreciate the convenience of one-stop shop, right? I just have this one music subscription service and now I get everything and everything's great. But we know monopolistic business is probably not a good idea. But JabberTech rolls out some great talking points about his own personal use, and they might be something you agree with or they might be something you disagree with. You won't know till you watch the video, and I would recommend giving it a watch. Second place last week on our glowing rectangles, and to round it out, he almost regularly is in at least the top 5. And I love this guy's channel. And now he's making a second channel. Gary from Gary Explains is creating a new Speed Test G channel. So this is one of those tricky things. I have considered, well, should I try and offload tech and politics to a new channel and then go through all of the rigmarole of getting that channel monetized? Should I split off, headphone reviews and make just an audio channel or go back to some audio guy? All of that stuff. Big, head trippy, tough. It's a mess. But what Gary is doing actually has a little bit of merit. So Gary Explains, when you have those topical conversations where he's explaining, he did a whole series on Raspberry Pis. He's done a whole series on programming or explaining battery tech or how much RAM your phone should have. Those Gary Explains videos, the explained is valuable commentary. So mixing those explained videos with speed tests, I could understand where those two don't always staple together the way that you would hope they would. So he's just going to make an entire channel about speed tests. I still have problems with just a timed speed test. His most recent speed tests have done a better job of breaking down from test to test to test what performance improvements and deficits you see between two different devices. But more than anything else, he's got a really fun, sort of shoutcast going on while the phones are running these tests. Oh no, he rounded the graphics test. Oh, and the compression test, this phone totally fell behind. Oh, looks like this is catching up on the Motorola. They're at least entertaining. And I feel Speed Test G is a little bit better of a speedy benchmark than just how many apps can I open and close as quickly as possible. That I don't, it's just a RAM test. It's not really a performance test. So, Speed Test G, standalone channel, currently only 3,000 subscribers. It took Gary way longer than it should have to get 100,000 subscribers. With Speed Test G being more of a focus, I would imagine it would take a while for that to start climbing up. But there's no reason why this shouldn't be triggering monetization, why he shouldn't already be into 5 digits. He's a critical voice making high quality content, something we should support. Again, I mean, it just blows me away. I went back and I manually went to YouTube because I thought I just wasn't getting notified, but nope. Nope, no more tech thing. Tech thing is gone. And that drives me crazy because I love Patrick Norton's commentary. So we all play a part. We all have a role in pushing content that we want to see more of. And increasingly, we're going to have a heavier responsibility in engaging with content creators and in helping to distribute the content that we like. And I know that there are a lot of people that will say things like, well, I just can't go and spam my Facebook channel. Yes, that's true. But the whole notion of I came up with one idea I can't do, I guess that's all there is also something we've got to get away from. Is that sort of tech entitlement? You know, that YouTube entitlement, like, I thought of nothing, and now I'm all out of ideas. Instead of, well, where can I share this stuff? You know, Gary explains, even Gary would probably be frowned upon sharing his own video to something like our Android subreddit, a really popular subreddit, because they have rules against self-promotion. But they're sort of fine with an army of people sharing the same unbox therapy video, right? So if we want Gary to do better, I mean, I am very appreciative of the fact that Gary the fireman shared Gary's video on my channel, but there are also other communities where this type of video might do well also, and help give him the signal boost that will keep his second channel healthy enough to continue producing content for it. It's the whole ecosystem approach, and finding those opportunities where you can give someone a plug, you can give someone a push, you can give someone a nod. So one potential source, reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. I hope to be at 420 members and subscribers by the end of this week. Give it a push, give it a nod, and see if you can also find some people that you like their stuff. You'll probably find something you've never seen before, a creator you've never heard from before, and that's the whole mission, is helping you find some fun new stuff too. So, lots of other conversations and people still recovering from my stream faltering. So let's get into two more little news stories. These ones I'm not gonna, they don't need to go very long. And then we can get into questions, comments, experiences, LG V50, Xperia 1. If you've got questions, I probably have some semblance of an answer. So one quick one, just because I think it's cool tech and something that is increasingly on our radar, is UPS has been delivering cargo in self-driving trucks for months, and no one knew. This is written up by Jennings Brown. The self-driving freight truck startup Too Simple has been carrying mail across the state of Arizona for several weeks. UPS announced on Thursday that its venture capital arm has made a minority investment in Too Simple. The announcement also revealed that since May, Too Simple autonomous trucks have been hauling UPS loads on a 115-mile route between Phoenix and Tucson. Later on, so they've got like a video here too of showing people just sitting in the cab of the truck, and they're not really driving because the truck is driving itself. But the end of this article is also a little bit scary. The partnership announcement states that Too Simple has been helping UPS understand how to get to level 4 autonomous driving, where a vehicle is fully autonomous and able to reach a particular location. At this point, the Too Simple trucks carrying packages for UPS still have an engineer and a safety driver riding along. When UPS reaches level 4, it won't need anyone behind the wheel. Oh, man. Oh, buddy. So, you know, that whole huge part of our economy and jobs market that's built on humans operating things like cargo carrying trucks? Only a couple years left, folks. I think that's going to start to get hit pretty bad. Again, this is incredible technology. I am super excited for self-driving. I'm hoping in the next 10 years, you know, before my daughter needs to learn how to drive, we'll just have self-driving everything, and it'll be fine. She'll be fine. She'll be great. She won't need to learn how to drive a car. I'm terrified about her learning to drive a car. But yeah, the driving economy is probably gonna start getting hit pretty bad. Kyle Ruggles, they took our gerbs. Matt Tyler, isn't it still illegal in the USA for self-driving trucks and cars to be used? No, it is not. It is actually being executed on a state-by-state basis, which is why they were testing in Arizona. Arizona has been a hotbed for autonomous vehicle testing. In fact, the Uber, the only time we really caught any significant headlines on it was when an Uber car ran over an old lady. But no, it's been left up to local regulators. There is no nationwide consensus on self-driving, and there will be a lot of economic pressure when UPS can say, man, we'd love to operate service and shipping and packing centers, but you won't let us use our cheaper trucks. So we're going to have some issues with shipping rates to your neck of the woods. I'm sorry, Kansas, but if you want us to ship there, we have to have a human driver. So if we have to have a human driver, then it's going to cost more to ship to Kansas. So tell your constituents that all of their package rates are about to go up. Nothing we can do about it. Self-driving's cheaper. LFA reviews, just wait until the automated Amazon lockers start making deliveries, fam. I mean, I had that idea on the Bored at Work podcast when they made their announcement about testing aerial drones, that Amazon would make a big play out of aerial drones, so that then it seemed totally normal when a driving drone just drove up to your house and it would honk its horn and you'd walk out there and there'd be like a locker and you'd punch in a code. It would open up, you'd take your stuff, close the door, and then the thing would just drive off on its own. Pizza delivery, same thing. Make an oven car and let it just drive to my house, and then I'll walk out and get my pizza. Last little story here. For someone like me, and I absolutely love wearable technology and moving notifications and other features and services off of my phone and onto other platforms, was just kind of a bummer if you wear a WearOS watch, that Runkeeper is going to stop supporting WearOS in a few weeks. Quote, "It was a very buggy experience and difficult for us to maintain and fix." This is by way of The Verge, written up by Nat Garoon. Runkeeper this week announced that it will discontinue its WearOS app in the next few weeks, as reported by Android Central. I should have just linked to Android Central if they reported on it first. We're going to click over and use Android Central. There we go. Written up by Jason England. Runkeeper is killing its WearOS app. This is a quote from the Runkeeper team. "Dear Runner, because you use the A6 Runkeeper app on a WearOS by Google device, we're writing to share some important news. As of app version 9.13, the Runkeeper app will no longer be available on WearOS by Google devices. We know this is disappointing and we're sorry to have to make this change. Our team has been hard at work building innovative and high-impact training tools designed to keep Runkeeper users moving. We want to provide the best tracking experience possible to everyone who uses the Runkeeper app, and we're just not able to offer it on WearOS by Google at this time." So, that's a bummer. That's a big bummer. I recently did a review on the Mobvoi TicWatch, the TicWatch Pro 4G, and it was something I brought up in my review. WearOS is the third place smartwatch operating system because Google really hasn't given it the developer initiative and push that it really needs. And in fact, even internally, the Nest app was just recently killed for WearOS devices. These little applets do provide some great benefits for quick interactions. The thing I loved about my Apple Watch was it plugged directly into my security system, the app that runs my security system. So on my Android phones, I have to turn on my Android phone, go to the app. I don't leave that app on my home screen, so it's in the app drawer. And then it takes a while for the LTE signal to communicate with that box. And then I can arm it or disarm it and do a couple other little control things. When I'm using an iPhone and an Apple Watch, I click a button on my watch. The little bubble is right there. I tap on that. And then somehow it's faster at activating that LTE signal, and I can arm or disarm. I can't do all of the other advanced stuff, but it's about half the amount of time to arm or disarm my security system from an Apple Watch as it is from an Android phone or from my iPhone. That's a benefit. those little applets can be a significant perk in abbreviating some simplified interactions with our devices. I want to push WearOS harder because, again, more competition would be great. And I don't like the ecosystem argument of, well, you're going to go Apple Watch and then you have to use an iPhone, or you're going to go Galaxy and use your Gear watch. If I want to use an LG phone or a Motorola or a Sony or an HTC or a OnePlus or any other device, that means I've pretty much got to use a WearOS watch. So Google, again, kind of failing us on the notion of ecosystem, tying some of their services together, supporting the people who are developing for those platforms, and trying to find exciting hardware. Like, again, a Gear Frontier is a really nice watch. I like my TicWatch a lot. And again, it's probably still, I think, the best bang for buck price performance ratio for a wearable, especially if you were in any way interested in LTE connectivity. But after that, it's like Fossil. And that's not exactly the most exciting ecosystem or roundup of new hardware gadgets for people to want to try and take this run. And then Google doesn't do a very good job of explaining what you can do on a WearOS watch. And then we start removing services from WearOS watches. It's just a mess. It's just a bummer. Kyle Ruggles, I like that this distinction you're making. You still got to use two hands to use a smartwatch, like WTF, LOL. Yeah, you do. But again, if we're talking about abbreviating an action and a simplified interaction, a lot of this I don't feel is, oh no, what am I doing? Oh, two hands. Oh, this is so hard. It's different than that. Matt Tyler, my Galaxy Watch works perfect on my OnePlus 7 Pro. Did Samsung finally include full support for all of the advanced features like speech to text and always on heart rate tracking? It's been I haven't used a Gear. I haven't used a Gear since the initial launch of the S3, and even then I used it mostly on a Samsung, so it had full support for all of the advanced functionality. It didn't omit services on like it does on another phone. Oh, Matt Tyler, you jerk. Feels really nice on the wrist. Abraham Artemis. So, WearOS possibly going to be another thing that Google will axe. I wouldn't be surprised. I am really, again, it's still going to take a couple more weeks before North and the Focals are in my hands. But increasingly for notifications and short, quick interactions, I'm getting increasingly irrationally excited for a heads-up display. And then it kind of won't matter what watch I'm wearing. I can go back to wearing just a regular analog timepiece, and I'll have all of my techie stuff just up at eye level, wearing some cool glasses. So, yeah, that's kind of the gig, because I don't want to mess with other platforms and services and things. And the Focals should play nice back and forth when those times I need to use an iPhone, go back to an Android phone. They should be fine. So it's what it is. So that's the end of all of the news and articles. This was another tech and politics heavy broadcast. I appreciate y'all sticking in there with me. Like I said, these are stories that have been evolving over time. Anytime we see something from the FCC, we've been talking about policing internet content through now both the left and the right have plans on how to circumvent the Communications Decency Act. Apple right to repair, another topic, totally something we need to stay on top of. And we can now talk about some fun stuff. We got about, 20 minutes, a half hour? Who wants to talk about the LG V50? It's a phone that hasn't been getting as much conversation as I think we would want it to. Again, we're hoping to find some some competition in the marketplace. So a phone that offers a different feature set and has some different pros and cons from the sort of the tech zeitgeist. What do we want to know about it? Immediately, I will say that the rollout for the V50 has been a little problematic because of how LG has been partnering with carriers. So a major part of their PR strategy has only been applying to areas in the United States that have 5G. I think they are starting to recognize that that is a difficult strategy to employ for those of us who don't live in 5G areas but still want to talk about their phones. So they sent over a Korean LG V50. This one will not operate on United States 5G, but it's working okay on LTE. It's working fine. This is actually kind of an old play that they used to do back in the day. So I want to say starting with the G4, with the G4 and the V10, when they would have issues trying to get American reviewers a carrier branded LG, they'd let us piggyback on a Korean model. And so the only thing that doesn't really work is I haven't found a way to change the LG keyboard to have a dollar instead of I don't know what the icon is called for a Korean currency. It's like a weird like W with a slash through it. So the only I can't type a dollar sign on the LG keyboard. I would switch over to something like Google Gboard, because I do like Gboard, but the cool thing about the LG keyboard when you have the dual screen is that the bottom becomes the keyboard and the top of your screen is left unmolested. So I like that feature because I miss those old school landscape HTC sliders. But it means I can't ever type, DKRY on on Mixer, telling me it's the Korean won, not to be confused with the North American Juan. But this is actually a really handy feature. I do like the dual screen approach on the V50 for giving me a work area and then a content viewing area. I'm still not sold on foldable phones and dual screen phones. Like, this is kind of a less clean version of an Axon M, right? So you can have two different apps in full screen going on at the same time. You can also do things like if you fire up a game, you've got all of these game pads that you can use. So I can do a dual analog stick. I can do a racing wheel if I don't touch the screen wrong. I can do an arcade stick. I can do one of these old weird like D-pad style just button configurations. It's really cool stuff. It doesn't work great in all games. One of the big issues I've run into are, so like some of my favorite dual stick shooters, when they detect a gamepad, they turn off auto fire from the right stick. And it's really hard to use a thumb to control the right stick and then not be able to shoot because you don't have a trigger key. So some things like that still kind of get in the way of this experience, but it's pretty handy. I mean, it's fun functionality. I don't know how practical it'll be, but it's a nice sort of expansion over a single screen device. It has not changed my mind significantly on dual screen or folding phones, but getting to play with one has been fun. Whether or not I would recommend that as some type of gotta have it accessory, the one thing I would say, if you were going to pick up an LG and you liked sort of a wallet fold case or some sort of screen cover case, which I'm not the biggest fan of, then this is a cool accessory because you would already have some kind of screen protection, and then you would have a second display when you wanted it. And it flips all the way to the back if you just want it to be sort of a standalone all one screen device. That's cool. Otherwise, I think it's something that you could probably pass on if you were in a market other than the United States. Here's the bummer. Here's what's going to frustrate a lot of people about the V50's accessory strategy. I don't think the United States V50 supports the screen case. So someone will have to correct me if I'm totally wrong, but on the USA V50s, I don't think they're going to come with these pogo pins that enable the second screen. This is the Korean V50, so it's got the features that LG really wants to showcase. LG tends to roll over to carrier demands. It's what I don't understand about how carriers do things like accessorize phones. It would seem to me that carriers would look at the V50 and say, hey, you know what? This is going to be a phone that's not going to sell as well as a Galaxy. So how can we get an additional purchase when a consumer comes in to buy the V50? That 1 out of 10 people who might consider shopping something that's not Samsung or Apple, how can we also get them to spend a little bit more money at time of purchase? It would seem to me you would want to include that functionality. So if you're watching this or you're listening to this, I don't have a hair on me. If you're watching this or listening to this in the United States, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's something we're going to get to play with. That to me becomes one of the bummers of this regional strategy. Do I think it's a mission critical accessory? No. And it can cause some issues with other functionality on the phone. Like when you have 2 apps open at the same time, one of the things that I've been doing is keeping my Discord server up on the second screen and then being able to do whatever I want on the main screen. But when you go to type in, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to type on 2 screens kind of stapled side by side because you can't wrap your thumb over to the other side. So you end up just trying to do the trace. Just trying to do the trace typing, the gesture swiping typing. So again, I don't think anyone would be too surprised to hear that some of this implementation is a little clumsy, but I think it's at least an interesting diversion. It's an interesting difference. And it's an accessory that no one else has really tried to include on a mainstream phone. And the closest we've gotten is Asus. So a specialist niche gaming phone is one of the only other players to offer this type of accessory and functionality. So, it's interesting. Moving on to the rest of the phone, I might not be doing the same kind of camera and audio deep dives because I'm not entirely sure how to keep saying LG is the best for headphone performance and LG is the best for camera, manual control, and video performance. And those 2 areas seem to be a bit more in a holding pattern compared to the V40 and the G8. The V50 really does feel like the love child of the V40 hardware with the G8 software, even down into things like the microphone performance. I do have a video that's going to be coming out just doing a quick comparison with the microphone and the noise reduction between the G8 and the V50, because the V50 gets us back to the mic type on the V40, if that makes sense. But I don't know that there's enough meat there to do full, super in-depth, granular analysis videos when you could watch my V40 camera review and you could watch my G8 audio review, and you would have a pretty good idea of what the V50 can do. So really more, I'm looking at some of the other extended functionality. I'm going to try, I think there is going to be an LG event for 5G soon. You can talk about what 5G really feels like on one of these phones. And then from there, just getting back more into some of the lifestyle and usage. I'm debating how hard to hit the second screen. Like, do I want to do a whole separate video on it just to kind of point out to Americans that you don't get it? But it is kind of nice. It's so silly that it would make me a bit frustrated not to have access to this. But when we talk about things like, oh, who would really want to watch a movie from their phones? The V50 uses a somewhat similar kind of echo or resonance chamber like the V40 did. It's still, none of them are as loud as the G7. I miss the G7 speaker and boom sound, boombox, whatever it was called. But you put it down on a flat surface or on a box or some type of open surface, and it resonates and it makes everything louder. The case doesn't block very much of that vibration. So when you put a movie up on the second display and you put the main body of the phone down on a box, it sounds really good. It sounds surprisingly good. It's competing very well against my nicer gaming laptop speakers, and it's able to fill a room pretty well. So little things like that would be handy. That would be fun. But again, we would need an LG that can get out there and advertise and kind of drive the discussion of their products a bit more aggressively. And they still don't seem to be pushing that hard. I showed up recently in a video on LG's channel. They reached out to me and asked if they could just use a snippet of one of my videos in sort of a promotional material. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Go for it. And they pulled 3 YouTubers and just who had nice things to say about the G8. And you're like, okay, I think they're starting to get a few of these things, but where is that one simple commercial just talking about the headphone port and audio quality? There still isn't that. And the headphone jack on the V50 is freaking phenomenal. Again, adopting the Meridian tuning and the hardware performance from the G8. It's just, again, LG's only competing with themselves, and this hardware is still getting better, which is insane. It's just incredible. And then the camera software. So if we're looking at photo and video performance, now it's the V40 triple camera, but with, I almost dropped it because of the second screen, but with the software advantages from the most recent update on the V40 with some of the benefits from the G8. So again, like the low light performance, the night mode processing, all of that stuff, more G8 feeling. So all the consumery things, nicer to use. And I would still put the auto processing and HDR processing from the G8 and the V50 up against what Samsung is doing. I like the look of LG photos and videos better. They've radically improved that image processing from the G7. And we have, built in a dedicated night mode, which I still don't think all versions of the Galaxy have gotten their dedicated night mode. Not only do you get the dedicated night mode, but you get the dedicated night mode with all 3 camera lenses. So if you want to do a night mode in ultra wide or a night mode in zoom, you can do that on an LG. That's a thing. You didn't know you needed it, but you can. Same thing, panoramas. Panoramas can use all 3 camera sensors. If you get into the manual modes, it kicks back to just the standard in the wide. But even the wide angle shooter will give you full manual controls up to 240 frame per second 1080p video. So if you wanted to lock the exposure on an ultra wide slow motion video, you can do it on an LG. This is a wholly unique option in the world of multimedia, and especially for anyone interested in higher quality audio or mobile content creation, mobile content production. So it's Matt Tyler, walk into a store to buy a phone and you see Juan promoting LG wearing a G8 shirt. Man, I wish I was getting that LG cash. It has been dark days for online video creation. I'm looking at cutting budgets across the board and having some tough conversations at Newegg. Kyle Ruggles, can you switch between the camera lenses while recording? You can't in full UHD at 60 frames per second. That is still something that it doesn't look like we'll be able to do. But it is, again, it's nice. You want to shoot UHD at 60 frames per second with the ultra wide. That's not something you can do on a Galaxy. So later this afternoon, I'm going to be putting out a video. There are companies who advertise professional grade cameras, right? They shall remain nameless, but I think you all know who I'm talking about. But those cameras, you actually get the phone in your hand and they have almost no manual control. And they have just a bunch of kind of AI gimmicks and kind of cheesy stabilization tricks. Maybe they also include like a Huawei feature, like, portrait video. which you'll use once and it looks like garbage, and then you'll probably never use it ever again. But there are two companies that are trying to empower mobile content creation, especially as it pertains to video. And the top two are the LG V50 and the Sony Xperia 1. And if you want to get in there and dial in controls, settings, exposure, you want to have some play over things like aspect ratio, the quality of the video that you're capturing, those two are the top two options right now. So I have a video shot. It's already live on the Patreon, but it'll be going public probably this afternoon or early tomorrow morning, depending on YouTube monetization killing me again. But I'm doing a pro camera, smartphone camera showdown between the V50 and the Xperia 1. So that'll need some help and some signal boosting and some conversation, because we can let marketing win. We can let people who spend more on advertisements declare that auto, green box, AI, HDR modes are professional. Or we could actually try and empower consumers and say, if you want to examine how you can create better content or dial in specifically the content that you want to create, there are options for that. And there are options that work better than third-party apps like Filmic. I like Filmic. I use Filmic on my OnePlus 7 Pro because OnePlus won't give me some of these tools. But Filmic is nowhere near competing with LG's camera app. And now Sony has fired a very clear shot across services like Filmic. Their cinema camera app is substantially better than you would think it would be for a first generation version of that coming from Sony, where they've never given us that kind of control before. So that's the gig. I haven't seen too many other questions. Gary the Fireman, are they committing to timely security and software updates or not so much? I've heard no additional chatter from LG about improving that. The current range of LG phones, though, have been better supported than I think we've ever seen from LG in the past. I know the G7 and V30 updates were recently mothballed. They went back to the drawing board on the V30. That there were some issues with the Pi update. The Pi update was harder than I think anyone realized it would be, because Samsung took a crazy long time to push that out, and now LG, because they're not great at that kind of software updating, has been the same. But I've gotten multiple bug fixes and one security patch on my G8. I think I've gotten 4 updates on my G8 since I got that, and that's a retail T-Mobile unit. And I've already gotten 2 on the V50. So there was one as soon as I took it out of the box, and then I was at the Peterson and it had downloaded the second one and was telling me it needed to reboot. So we rebooted in the middle of the Peterson. But those were more like, launch first week, sort of bug fix, out of the box kinds of things. I don't know that should be counted as consistent support. But that's also the thing is I like LG software better than I like Samsung software, because at least LG software has never removed really good features from my phone. But if you want software, if you want that bleeding edge, you got to go Pixel, OnePlus, or any of the Android One handsets. I wouldn't recommend Samsung or LG to someone who really, really says that they want the fastest software support for any of that. Let's see. Goran Petrovic. I dreamed a few nights ago LG bought HTC, and Kyle Ruggles. LMFAO, the half-dead buying the dead. Oh, HTC. Matt Tyler, do you think LG should make a play for the mid-range market again like they used to? I think it's smart money. I think it's really smart money. Like a K-series, bring back a K-series, or invest some fresh design in a new stylo. Those sell phenomenally well. It's easy to forget that LG is actually not a super weak, third place or fourth place in the USA market. I want to say they're third place. So if Apple and Samsung dominate around 80% of the market at any given fiscal quarter, LG is consistently held on to top 5, if not top 3 in the United States. So a major part of that is the the prepaid market, the mid-range market, the popularity, it's surprising. Go online and look up stylo videos. There is a huge community of people that dig that phone. But again, you would never know about that. You would never know that for all of the noise that OnePlus makes, that OnePlus is, I think, now just rounding out the top 10 in smartphone manufacturers in the United States, mostly probably thanks to T-Mobile, and that LG is in top 3 or 4, depending on what fiscal quarter we're in. The sentiment would feel like OnePlus is doing this amazing business and that LG is vanished from the marketplace. But that's not really the reality of how these companies are doing business and how they are selling products to consumers. So again, it makes it doubly frustrating that LG has completely walked away from any of those conversations. Not like you want to advertise we're number 3, but people should know that there's an option outside of Samsung and Apple that is respectably popular in the remaining chunk of smartphone sales, right? If there's 20% of the market that's divided up against every other manufacturer, it's kind of a big deal that LG would be sitting at the top of that pile. And Fat Produce, I bet one of LG's top selling devices were the Stylo. I would totally believe that that's one of their highest sellers. LG G Powerline sells good. That's definitely one. Fat Produce, I'm looking to route my OnePlus and Pro so I have access to all 3 cameras in Gcam. Does Google Camera, has anyone properly ripped that Google Camera APK to support switching cameras? I'd love to play with that. I honestly haven't dug back into it. I found one of the early OnePlus 7 Pro Google Camera ports just because it bugs me how OnePlus still refuses to address shutter lag, and then you fire up a Gcam port and it's like instant. The phone is crazy more powerful than OnePlus would let you feel it is. So I need to play around with that more. From Damn It Adrian, have you experienced burn-in on your LG panels? My usage is super atypical. I am not a good resource for that type of long-term lifestyle abuse because I use 2 different phones every day. And I've gotten really lucky with LG panels. All the way back to my Flex and Flex 2, because the use is super aggressive and then intermittent, I haven't had any issues with those panels. My V30 was one of the good ones. I got a great OLED on my V30. The amount of gray modeling and banding was just below. It was just a tiny bit lower quality than the comparable Samsung panel of its year. So while everyone was talking about how terrible the POLED was for the V30, mine was great. And then from there, every other panel has been very, very good. The V40 was excellent. The V40 was one of the best displays of its year. The V50 is looking similar. The G8 is really good, but but LG is doing more manipulation on things like gamma and saturation. So it's a little less reliable for content production, like if you want the most accurate display, but it's still an extremely high quality panel, super juicy, colorful, HDR friendly panel. It's going to be great for content consumption. It's just when you're going to edit a photo or you're looking at, maybe uploading a video, it's a little bit less accurate than what you would get from like a Galaxy S10. A Galaxy S10 in a controlled, a display profile. So my LGs have been great. I can't speak to any type of degradation or burn-in, but I'm also not using them 24/7, 365 for 2 years. So I can't really comment on that. From Steve, the G Flex series was notorious for its easily burned-in panels, and mine were fine. Mine are still good. I haven't gone back to check out the Flex 1 in a while, but I did boot up my Flex 2. And I used that Flex 2 heavy. I used that phone a lot. Again, I liked the look of the display a little bit better than I liked the LCD on the G4. So I flipped back and forth between those two phones were in my pocket together for a really long time. It's just a bummer that the Snapdragon 810 was such a waste. From Steve, I've used the Gcam on my G7 with all the cameras usable. I'm going to have to dig around. If someone's got a link handy to a Gcam port that works with multiple cameras, please send it along. It's like the OnePlus could use some help. The cameras are solid. They're very good. It's OnePlus's software lets down the experience just enough that I understand why people are a bit frustrated with it. From Damn It Adrian, the LG gods are on your side. Matt Tyler, I'll send you the same link I sent to Andrew, because I think Andrew is going to be joining the OnePlus team pretty soon here. I don't know if I'm outing him or if he wants that information shared, but he sold off his Huawei. He was rocking an Xperia. I have mine handy right here. It's the Xperia XZ1 Compact, which is still a beastie little Mighty Mouse phone, and I still freaking love this phone. But I think he might be looking at moving over to OnePlus coming up, especially because apparently his girlfriend just got a OnePlus 7 Pro, and I think he's probably got some screen envy when he's looking at his little Xperia, and he's like, oh, but my girlfriend has a really awesome OnePlus display, so I guess I need to get a new phone. Oh, there he is. My almond color is coming into my... he went almond and gold. Very fancy, Andrew. So, I think it's going to wrap it up. I am going to have a blast with this V50. I've got to finish my Xperia 1 videos first, and then I have a couple other things. Coming to the channel, because TK and I never did finish our cheap phone challenge, I'm going to shoot a little just short. It's not going to be a super well-produced video, but more of a vlog on because I used the T-Mobile Revel, and Alcatel made some badass phones, especially for these mid-rangers. I reached out to T-Mobile and said, hey, I got to spend time with one of these older T-Mobile branded phones. What about spending some time with the Revelry Plus? And so this is T-Mobile's branded mid-range, mid-cost smartphone. It's designed to do battle with Moto G series. And I'm having so much fun going back and checking out some of these mid-cost solutions. In the $300 to $500 price territory is some of the most exciting territory. So again, especially coming off of reviewing the Pixel 3a, which I'm going to be going down to the YouTube space tonight to hang out with some of the Team Pixel people. So I'll be the only one there probably with a 3A and not a Pixel 3 XL. But after playing with a $400 phone and now firing up a phone that's just under $400, there's some really good stuff out there. And I feel like this is the right time to keep pressing the conversation. You're talking to your family and friends. We just recently had someone asked on the Patreon Discord, the SomeGadgetGuy, the Team SGG Discord channel, about a phone for their mom. And the discussion was hovered around devices like the Galaxy A50. This is the right ballpark to be playing in. This is the right time to start pushing some of our family and friends away from overbuying on a phone. Why they're spending, or just to ask them, why are you spending $1,000 on a phone? Oh, well, I'm leasing it. Nope, you're still going to be paying full retail for that phone. What are you doing on your phone that you need a $1,000 device? Because something in the $300 to $500 territory will do everything you need really well. And so I'm excited. This is a beautifully constructed device. I am, again, if you want to go glass on glass sandwich, the little metal trim in the middle, this feels like any other flagship phone. It's going to look like any other flagship phone. You pull it out of a pocket or a purse. It's gorgeous. and still plays with all of those fun things that we loved about like Alcatels and stuff in the past. Dual camera sensors, a nice 1080p display. The speakers are good. It's got a built-in headphone jack. More of this. I like more of this. This is going to be good times. So, let me just kind of do one last little scan through here. LFA reviews pinky fingers up for the almond color. Goran Petrovic, is the ROG2 coming? Do anything to get it. I reached out to Asus again. I haven't heard back. We were the Asus PR rep that I was talking to was all about sending me a Zenfone, and then there's just been radio silence. So I don't know if I'm going to get to spend any time with Asus this year. Gary the Fireman, John Legere will send you a magenta shirt. I will wear a magenta shirt when T-Mobile pays me to wear a magenta shirt. LFA reviews. Team Pixel, all the cool stuff happens in SoCal. You know that's not true, Mr. I got to hang out with a bunch of really super popular tech YouTubers up in San Francisco. Come on now. Very little actually takes place down here in Los Angeles because we flake. We flake bad. You try and do a tech event in LA, and maybe a third of the people who are RSVP will show up. Matt Tyler, I may send over my ROG Phone 2 for Juan to review for us for a bit. and a lot of people telling Matt he should totally do that. Matt, we can chat. I don't know that I'll take you up on that offer because I might have more phones than I can fully review by the time we get to the end of the year, but we should chat. We can chat. So, folks, that's going to do it for me. Lots of stuff coming out on the channel. Be on the lookout. I'm going to need your help signal boosting the Xperia 1 versus LG V50 camera review because there isn't any Samsung or Apple in the SEO. So we know that Google is going to poop all over that video. That's going to be, I'm going to push it out regardless of the monetization state. I'll push it out this afternoon just so that we don't wait for it any longer. And then I've got a lot more stuff coming. I've got another short editorial on the Xperia 1. The camera reviews are almost finished. I've almost finished writing the camera reviews for the OnePlus and for the Xperia 1. And I'm going to tack on a couple other short videos for the LG V50. Busy week. And I'm going down to go hang out with Team Pixel tonight. So I'm going to need some help. Liking, sharing, subscribing, all of that fun stuff. And then also when the audio version of this podcast goes live, the blog post that I'll put out on this, all of that's going to help tremendously in getting the word out there. So first of all, I want to thank everyone in the live chat. This is another lit up live chat. I have so much fun digging through these topics with you. And again, I always want to say thank you for indulging me on tech and politics. Topics that I feel deserve a lot more attention don't always get the attention they deserve. And there's a huge consumer impact when we don't know what's going on with the political system surrounding our favorite hobbies and tech passions and gadgets and toys. So you know where I'm going to be. I'm going to be back here next Monday, another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. Thanks so much for watching, for sharing these videos, subscribing to this channel, these channels. If you want to jump in, have another chat with me over the week, the Discord is live for the Patreon, so we can have our own little private chat room there. And of course, you can always reach out to me on the socials, the Twitches, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, kind of. And I'll catch you all next week on another episode of the SGGQA podcast. I want you to be awesome with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your technology. And I want you to have a fantastic week. Take care. I love you all. Be well.